Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Asherz, and this is
Tobias.
it's Tobias. Welcome back. I keep saying that. It's new still. I mean, it's just not going to get old yet. Um,
It feels a little new. I hope it never gets old. So
fair
let's
enough.
I guess let's not focus on that, right?
That's true. That's true. How have you been the last 2 weeks? How was your weekend?
Good, good. Oh God, what did I even do last weekend? I had a like an all day session of this nerd game that I run. I love tabletop role playing games, as anybody who knows me should be well aware. And so last Saturday, I ran a session for the Cipher system by Monty Cook Games, and it's for a campaign setting that I actually made up. That's called Welcome to Magonia. And so some people listening out there hopefully recognize that name, Magonia. And let me explain just a little bit about this setting first, and then it's all going to make sense. And
Sure.
so it's set in this fictional town called Magonia, which is as I refer to it, the unofficial home of high strangeness for southeastern Wisconsin. And so it is this little town that is sort of known for strange things happening in and around it, and the player characters can be a variety of different species or types of being, or you can be a sort of mundane human being who's just sort of been thrown into all this weirdness. But oh, and I guess I should explain too, for anybody who didn't get that reference. Of course, Magonia I chose because of Passport to Magonia, which is Jacques Vallée, well, arguably Jacques Vallée's sort of seminal work on the comparative study of fairy lore and UFOs. And so I thought it
Oh,
was
okay.
very appropriate to name this weird little town after that, specifically because so much of the campaign is going to revolve around these high strangeness events.
Wow, very cool. That's so neat. I'm not creative like that. I don't know. Fuck you guys for being creative and being able to build your own worlds and stories. And I mean that just amazes me every time. I don't. I've got really really good friends that are in the D&D circles, and it gets so out of hand. And I'm like, why aren't you guys writing this stuff down? Well, it turns out you are. It's just in the heat of the moment. So
Right. Well, there's a lot of planning that goes into it, at least for me, in advance of actually running it. And at some point, now that I've got three books out, and I've sort of gotten used to writing things for people to read. I'm sure at some point I'm going to get all of my notebooks together and sort of get the best ideas out of them, and sort of get them down and publish them in the TTRPG sphere, and that'll be cool. I mean,
yeah,
it's about as lucrative as this, right? So it's
yeah.
not it's not going to make me millions of dollars or anything, but it's fun and I really like it. And if anybody else out there actually enjoyed anything that I created for that too, I think that would be really really cool. So
Well, I mean, you're already doing it anyway. You might as
yeah,
well write it down into a book and put it out there for others to do. So
totally.
I think it is neat. I've always wanted to get into it. I don't know people, and then some I know some people, I guess, but I just feel like I don't know. It seems rude. Can I come over and play your game? I don't know. I'm just a weird person like that. Like I know nothing about any of this. Will you teach me? Like it's nobody's job to teach me.
I got to tell you though, honestly, I mean, nobody I know who plays role playing games would ever view it like that. I would be fucking ecstatic if somebody was like, "Hey, would you teach me how to play this game?" Because a lot of the time it's hard to find players. Like I belong to this role playing club in Madison here, and it's tough to get players. It really is. Like we do pretty well,
Hmm.
but we're constantly trying to brainstorm new ways to like recruit people, to get people to like leave their houses and want to come to this gaming store and actually play these games. So yeah, no, if somebody was just like, hey, can I come over and play this game? I'd be like, when are you free? Because I can be available anytime.
Like, I'm free the next 10 minutes. Come over. Yeah,
Yes.
it's yeah, and I literally live across the street from this bar called D20.
Mm,
And it's a tabletop gaming bar. Like that's the point of it. And they don't just have, I mean, it's not just for like D&D and like involved games. They've got like regular tabletop games and
sure.
sometimes they'll do like video game tournaments and things like it's neat. I've been there. I hang out there. But and I guess I never go by myself. And so if I'm there with like another person or a group of people, then I would feel strangely. Either way, I'd feel strangely about approaching strangers in the middle of a game and being like, "Can I just like watch you guys, and then maybe next time you're here, join in?" But I don't
Really,
know.
but
Maybe it would be welcome.
I promise you, like what you are describing is so normal in the seriously in the TTRPG sphere that like nobody would even look at you twice. You
Hmm.
hell yeah, you can just sit and like and watch people and then join next time. Like that is so normal. Yeah, you shouldn't feel weird about it even a little.
I might have to try that sometime. Let me tell you, after the holidays, I think for sure. No,
Do
that's
it.
really neat. I think that's awesome that you do this and that it is a good time for you. So,
Well, thank you. But let us not forget, how was your weekend?
oh gosh, so I've been well. First of all, my daughter turned 12 this past weekend,
Hey, happy birthday, Asher's
and
daughter.
thank you. I'll thank you on her behalf.
Great.
It's my responsibility, and so that that's always it's always stressful, but it is always interesting because like I don't know, I made her, you know what I mean? Like, you never really, like, get over that. So, it's always birthdays are always a time to take stock, right? And you kinda do that anyway at the end of the year usually, but, especially when it comes to, your own birthday or, your kid's birthday, and you just kinda look back on, I guess, the thing that you've created and see how it's progressed, and it's just very interesting. I get people's interest in studying kids and childhood and just to look at all the different people that she's been throughout her entire life. You'll never get that with another person that's not your child. So
Sure.
it was very neat, but it was good. It was fun. Typical kids' birthday party situation, and I'm still on my kick of watching and reviewing my Christmas movies. And I wanted to talk about some of them.
Yeah, what have you
So
watched?
I thought we would do that. I've watched a lot of stuff. In particular, I did take a break from the Christmas movies because everybody was talking about this thing on Netflix. It's called Leave the World Behind. Have you heard about this?
I've been seeing ads for it. I haven't watched it.
It is rampant. I mean, basically, it's, a family leaves to go on like a vacation to get away from the city, and they're in the middle of nowhere, and like shit starts hitting the fan with the world, and like the world is like basically some type of post-apocalyptic, but it's like the very beginnings of it and they don't really know what's going on. That's kind of not really the point of it. The point of it is more so how people react in that kind of situation and how strangers have to work together to kind of help each other in these times. And I don't know, you get a lot of people that are like, oh man, people need to watch this movie. It's very important. And unfortunately, the reason why they think that you should watch it is because they believe it is based on a real life conspiracy um, about a false flag operation with the government, making it appear
Uh-huh.
that the world is ending.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah, well, it's like all of the Walmarts are being turned into federal prison camps,
right,
right? Like
for
that
like the
that
last
level.
15, 20 years, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they have been. They've really been working on that project for a long time. Amazon too now, I hear.
Oh
Um,
no.
but it's one of those, it's one of those things on social media, and it was, I believe, produced by the Obamas, and so like that's another thing to it. Pat and I had actually talked about this, back when it was first announced
Uh,
because it had the Obama's name attached to it, and I mean, I'm pretty sure he called that shit right out. He's like, "Oh yeah, well that's weird. It's about the apocalypse. That's weird." And here people are thinking that it's weird. It can't just be that it's a movie, but it's that it
right.
has to be a conspiracy. So, I don't know. It's okay. Check it out. You don't need to watch it. There's other apocalyptic movies out there that are pretty good.
I got to tell you this though, like, okay, if somebody tells me it's important for me to watch a movie, that is the easiest way to guarantee I'd never fucking watch that movie. because that sounds so pretentious and so douchey that I already know what I'm in for. And if I want to be preached at, I just go to church. Like,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
If I tell you that it's important for you to watch a movie, it's probably like Thanksgiving or something.
Oh, right. Yeah. If you're like, this is really important because I know you and I
Yeah.
know you'll like it. Yes. If it's important because it has some shitty message that you think that I'm so stupid that I didn't figure out on my own, so I need to get it from a movie, eat shit. I'm not watching
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's no surprise as to what it's about. I mean, it is an interesting take on, like I said, post-apocalyptic, near death type of weird experiences, but
Mm.
it's not. I don't think it's particularly special. It's okay. It's okay, but don't go out and get Netflix for it. Like, borrow someone else's. Oh, yeah, you can't borrow Netflix anymore. So
That's right. They're cracking down.
just pirate it off the internet, you really want to watch it. It's okay, it's not terrible. Anyway, on to other movies that I've watched and I wanted to talk about. This one I just watched yesterday. I watched it with my kid. She wanted to watch it. It was the Grinch horror movie, The Mean One. Have you seen
Nice.
this?
No, I heard about it the other day, and then I saw you post about it,
Yeah.
and so it's on my list of things to watch after Emily has gone to bed, which means I will probably get to watch it sometime in the next week or so.
Well, we'll reconvene. I gotta have somebody to talk to about that. Listen,
Okay.
this movie I did not think would be as fucking good as it was. Like, I'm so surprised of how much I enjoyed it. Like, this came out last year. It came out in like the height of, turning childhood icons into horror villains, right? And we got that in the form of the most popular, the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey horror movie, which was terrible. That one wasn't good. And it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I've definitely seen worse movies than the Winnie the Pooh movie. It's just a lot about it that didn't make a lot of sense. The story wasn't very good. This is not like that. I mean, this is you take the Grinch story and turn it into a horror movie. I mean, even down to the heartfelt ending, like the nice wholesome ending, like but it's a horror movie. It's
Huh.
so good. Which I won't give anything away because there are spoilers to be had. But no, it really is genuinely good, and I feel like it's unfortunate that I got skipped over because of the reputation of these types of movies. And my child, who like I said is 12, is coming at it through a child's perspective. She loves it, and she's like, I think that they need to do more of these types of horror movies. She really likes it, and she is a kid, like so she likes both of those things, the kid version and the scary version, which I agree with. Hell yeah, keep making nice, cute things into scary movies. I'm fine with this.
Yeah, I
I'll
don't
watch
see
it.
what the problem is, like, at
I,
all. If somebody doesn't like it, there is this option available for them. It's called not watching it, and
right.
it's super easy. Like, you can't get any easier than not watching something, and that's all they got to do. Problem
It's
solved.
gonna corrupt the children. The children are gonna accidentally go see the mean one, with the movie poster with the Grinch having the meat cleaver on the front of it because they thought it was the actual Grinch, and it's gonna corrupt them. I think that's what people think. I don't know.
Really? Is this movie like a bigger problem than, say, like the nationwide GOP takeover of fucking school boards? Because that's really going to corrupt children.
Or the lack
Or-
of mental health resources in a dying
right.
society. I don't know. Um,
Seriously, get your priorities straight, people. It's a
right.
fucking movie about a made up character. It's fine.
I know it's really whatever. I'm not a part of that group. I think they're lots of fun, and I really like this one. If you're not gonna watch the other ones, it just even I've even heard it from like horror movie fans. They're like, "Oh no, don't watch this," and it's like, really? But you guys are hyped about a sixth or seventh fucking Scream movie, really?
Yeah.
Give this a shot. It's really good. It's a really fun movie for the holidays, if you're into the holiday horror thing. And then, of course, the last movie I'm going to talk about today, the Mothman Prophecies.
Oh,
The
I saw
Mothman
you posted
Prophecies.
about that.
I
And
did.
people get big mad and they
They
have like
do.
a they have so many opinions. I want to start out by saying this. Richard Hatem is a super cool guy. And I don't know him super well, but like I know him from, the internet. And he's been super cool to me and like super cool about my
Yeah.
work. And I think he's a hell of a writer. And I don't have a bad thing to say about him or his screenplay or anything else. But I do understand like some of the issues that people had with that movie from somebody, or I should say, as somebody who is generally a huge purist when it comes to adaptations of things.
Yeah.
And so I get why that would be jarring. So, but anyway, like
Yeah.
I think you should say your piece, and then we can
Well, and
talk
that's
about it.
basically, yeah. I mean, I agree. As a film, well, so I've heard about the guy that wrote it. I heard that he's not into all of this other stuff, but man, he is into Mothman.
Mhm.
And I've heard people say that, I've never talked to the guy. I've heard that they've said that, they've talked to him and he knows his shit. He's good at his stuff. And, he has defended the movie by stating that there's so much in this story, it was really hard to put it as a movie that's watchable. And I understand that. I get that. There is a lot to it. But God, there's so much about it that I don't even understand why they would put some of it in there. The Injured Cold stuff ended up being more about Injured Cold than the Mothman, I feel like. And I just feel like they could have omitted that completely and just put it somewhere else, and that would have made more sense.
Mhm.
I believe that's where the Blackbird of Chernobyl came from, is from this movie.
Oh, it totally is. Yeah.
That's the earliest mention of that. It's never been anywhere else. I think it's come from this movie. But there are other things about it that like I do appreciate, and little small details that like I do agree with. Like when, I'm sorry, John Klein, not John Keel, John Klein's wife dies. They had mentioned in the hospital she was like drawing like figures of angels. But like we know it's the Mothman, right? And so,
Mhm.
and we just talked about that, last time you're on here, how I think that there's a correlation there. And I didn't think that because of the Mothman prophecies. I thought it because, well, winged humanoid. So I mean, I appreciate those kinds of ties, and they kind of touched on like the victim with the weird eye problem, except they changed the person. It's fine. Like I said, little things that I enjoyed, little call outs that I enjoyed, but the overall movie is just such a bad representation of events. And I think that, it's 2023 and nobody's took a crack at it yet. And I think that's weird. I think we should, right? It's
A-
time.
As far as trying to make a more historically accurate movie,
Yeah.
is that okay? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I could see that, and I don't think anybody would claim that this adaptation is in any way accurate to any events in terms of like historical accuracy and dates and times and names. Of course, like I mean, like John Keel's name had been changed. I don't Is Mary Hire even in it? I don't remember. Um
She is. She's
she
like, he like ended up in Point Pleasant on accident. It was like
Yeah, it was like
mysterious
a weird
circumstances. But the
teleportation
reason
or something.
the reason why he was going there was because he was speaking with another reporter, Mary.
Okay, right.
And so that was like the only like portion, which sucks because she was such a big player in the original events. But yes, she was kind of in there. So
Okay, okay. So yeah, I mean it's I think what it is meant to do, and I think it succeeds very well in this, is translating the mood and the feel, and to some extent the experience of high strangeness. And it does that. It definitely succeeds in doing that. As far as my personal feeling, I think it does that pretty well. But yeah, I think if you are somebody like us, and this is something that you take very seriously, you sort of treat it on a different level
yeah,
than your casual moviegoer, right? And so
yeah,
if somebody like you is looking at it, then yeah, I mean, you have to deal with the like there's already enough misinformation out there, and you're already dealing with that constantly and having to
yeah,
correct people. And so it can feel a little personal, I think, to see something that isn't an inaccurate representation, like a literally accurate representation of these events, when they really did happen. They really did happen to actual people.
right.
And so if somebody is interested in this stuff and all they know about it is this movie, well, then they're not like, they don't know fucking anything.
No,
They
yeah,
don't know anything about it. Like, and that can be frustrating. So
yeah,
I totally understand. I think that I think it just kind of is what it is. And if you can
Yeah.
like appreciate it for the things that it does well, then great. And if you can't, then I totally understand. But I just remember on your Facebook post too, like sort of some of the usual suspects who listen. I don't even know why like they're friends with you on Facebook. They
Yeah.
only seem to come out to like try to correct you and
Yeah.
seem like the smartest fucking dude in the comment section or whatever every fucking time. It's like, dude, I hope this girl you like sees this because
Right.
nobody else cares. Like
Right. You want
nobody
him to just
thinks.
message her directly and be like, "Oh, he dunked on me so hard."
Oh, totally. Be like, look how smart
Uh,
this dude is on fucking Facebook.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I saw that, and like it took everything in me to not respond to like every single person and be like, why are you even here?
Right.
Like what? Nobody gives a shit about your fucking opinion on this, especially if you're gonna write like a small essay about it.
I don't even
Because
read them.
no, you shouldn't. I mean, I was pretty bored. I think it was like Sunday, so
Unless
I
it's like
was I was
names I
sitting around doing nothing.
recognize, like for the most part, like I won't. I just don't even. I don't care. I know how people feel about this movie. Some people are like, "Well, I wouldn't even know about Mothman if it wasn't for this," and I guess I believe that. Here's the thing: I live 2 hours away from it. Right? I would have.
Yeah,
I knew about the Mothman before I watched this movie, and and I started investigating it before I watched this movie. So people have to understand that that's how I came into this, and as a thriller, right? As a movie that's trying to convey John Keel, right? And all the crazy shit that he talks about. Right, it's not bad. I understand that part. But then you get to the end, the very end of the movie,
mm,
and it like reads off like, oh, such and such, these people died and it was terrible. Nobody ever knows what caused the bridge collapse. And I'm like, yes, we fucking do. You just lied. I mean, you just straight up, like the rest of it's fiction, right? I get that. It's like a fan fiction of the Mothman events. But
yeah,
then you just straight up fucking lied to the audience. And that's when I'm like, you know what? Fuck this movie. That's where it teeters me. And
okay,
I know that they do that on every movie that's based on true events. I get it.
mm,
But I have heard people repeat that information and information from the movie as if it's fact over and over and over again. And I'm like, I'm always nice. And I'm like, well, no, like it's not a good representation of actually what happened. You should look into it. And then they're like, yeah, what the movie says. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you serious? So I guess that's what gets me heated
sure,
about it. And I agree with you. Yes, all the people that come out of the woodwork and they're like, oh, yeah, but it's important because of this. And it's like, I don't give a fuck.
right. Well, there are. I mean, it's usually the. Well, actually, okay. Let me start with this. Sometimes I feel like the last fucking person on the planet who reads books. Because I read the Mothman prophecies for the first time in like junior high. Like yeah,
Yeah.
it was like 30 years ago. And so like when the movie came out, like yeah, I was excited and I went and saw it and like I was like, huh, well this was something of a departure from what I might have expected, but whatever. Like I've read the book. I already know about most of these reports and everything, and so like it was fine. But like every time I hear somebody who's just like, well, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't even know about this stuff. I'm just like, what happened to society? When did we stop reading? Like
Right.
when did that stop being like the way that people find out about things or learn about things? Like even if you saw this and wanted to know more, why wouldn't the library be your next step? Like that just bugs the crap out of me. And it's not to take anything away from the movie. It's just that no movie can ever convey the same amount of information as a book. You
Yeah.
just can't.
Yeah. And
It's
that's
not.
why I can't watch any of the like any film based off of the Warrens because I have such a strong opinion about them already, which you guys who listen to the show know already. That I can't like sit here and watch a movie that's just jerking them off the whole time. I can't stand it.
Oh yeah, no, they're fucking terrible. I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Right. I can't even appreciate it as a movie because I mean I just can't. I just cannot support it. And Mothman Prophecies, the movie isn't that bad, but I
No,
just think that once you're standing so close to a topic, unless you are going to completely remove it from the source material. So like a movie about like a killer Bigfoot, I can enjoy those, because it's
Mm,
not about like it's not about like, oh, they're, it's Patterson Gimlin going to the woods and then Bigfoot kills them.
right.
It's about just some random nobody and just this creature. If it were about just Mothman and Mothman doing something that's not related to the source material, okay, great. I can appreciate that, I think, better, because then my brain can separate it. But if it's based off of the actual events, I don't know. I guess I'm too nitpicky.
Well, I think that maybe where the disconnect here is that Hollywood doesn't think any of this is real, and so they don't give a shit. And I'm not
Yeah.
talking about Richard specifically because he's a very open minded guy.
Right.
I'm talking about like studios, like the culture in Hollywood, like the fucking suits and stuff. They don't care. They don't think it's fucking real anyway, and so they're not interested in trying to portray events accurately in the way that you would if it was something that people considered historical fact. Although, there is something else to say about that, because even when you watch the movies that are supposed to be, historically accurate, they
They're
usually
not.
fucking aren't. They're
Yeah.
usually still real bad in terms of actual historical accuracy. So that's just not a thing. I think that Richard took a big swing in writing this movie because I think, and I don't want to speak for him. I can't read his mind, but I would suspect, based on things he said, that he knew there's no direct adaptation of that book. Like
Right.
it's never going to happen in a million years for a bunch of reasons. And so knowing that, he was like, well, if I can't adapt this book, word for word to the big screen, I can at least capture its essence. I can at least communicate to people the experience
Yeah.
of encountering high strangeness. And I think in that he succeeded. But I don't think that that's going to resonate as well with people who have a personal investment in this phenomenon, because all you're going to see is everything that it got, quote unquote, wrong.
Yeah.
And I totally get that, because I get pissed off every time I hear people talk about the stupid Blackbird of Chernobyl 2,
Right.
or
Every time.
any of that stuff. Like it's just, I'm like, are you even serious right now? Like I can't tell you how many
No.
times like I will correct people,
Yeah.
and they'll still come back and be like, "Oh, well, I saw this thing on the internet." And I'm like, "Well, did it come out after like 2002 or whatever this?"
Right.
Because if you can't trace it back to earlier than that, it's from the damn movie. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, and I'm one of those people. If I watch a movie that's based off of true events and it's something that maybe I'm just vaguely familiar with or not even familiar with at all, I will then go and like fact check the movie. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. Like I will go and look back on the events. When Straight Outta Compton came out, I thought that was a fantastic movie. It was very well made. It was, fun, I guess, for lack of a better term, and it was interesting. And, I didn't know about Dr. Dre's origin story. I had no idea, but it made me interested to find out, like, what they get right, what they get wrong. They made some really heavy implications about a certain individual, which I'm not going to name because I don't want to get sued. Um, not that they listen to the show or anything, but hey, I'm not going to take my chances. And I was curious, like, what are the facts here? That's the type of person that I am. And I understand that it's not on the movie makers to make sure that the audience is smart enough to do their homework. It's on the audience. But you and I both know how that goes.
right.
So I'm more frustrated with the people that watch it and take it as fact and gospel than I am with the people that actually made it, because overall, how I'm not going to make a Mothman movie, a fictional Mothman movie, or anything like that. So I mean, who am I to judge it? Good for them, they did it, and people really enjoyed it. It was successful. It is what caused the Mothman Festival to happen. I agree. It probably brought most of the attention to the subject, right, from people not around here, but you know what, I watched it. It was on the list. Somebody recommended it. They watch it every year. I get why people do, but I don't think I'll ever watch it again. Probably not for another 10 years at least.
Oh, sure. No, I mean, like, and you're absolutely right. It did get widespread attention paid to this phenomenon. Other than like me and the other dozen people who still seem to read books,
Right.
most people had never heard of it. Still, most people haven't heard of it, even with
Yeah.
the relative success of that movie. So it's definitely done. It's definitely done good. Also, I think something that it has going for it is that at no point, I think, does the movie pretend to be like in inaccurate retelling. You know what I mean? Like, certainly in the movie, yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to say like based on true events or whatever. But that's not the same thing as, say, like producing a pseudo documentary series
Right.
and claiming everything in it is real when it's all bullshit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it doesn't do that, and that's why, like, I just can't feel that strongly about it. I can't summon strong negative feelings, because at some point it is incumbent upon the viewer, to think critically, to have half
Mhm.
a fucking brain, and figure it out. And like, look at any other resources. So,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
people
And
aren't going to do that, then what are you going to do?
right. And they are. So the big news that had come out in the fall is that guess what they're doing? They're doing a series on the Mothman prophecies. And
Oh.
I'd heard some things about it. Some people had said it was a prequel. I don't know how you can prequel that. I don't think if that's the case, I don't think that's a good move.
Like a fictional TV show.
Like a TV show. Yeah. And so there is going to be like a TV show, like a series, like on Netflix or something, and I will watch it when it comes out. I'll watch it. Hell yeah, I'll watch it. And I think that it would be a good idea to put this story into a series. I think that would make a lot more sense. And is it going to have historical inaccuracies? Hell yeah, it is. The
Well,
book, The
yeah.
Mothman Prophecies, has historical
I
inaccuracies.
was just gonna say, John Keel is the king of historical inaccuracies in 40 in writing,
Which
so
is
you have to
ironically
include him.
that's
Like,
very accurate, so
yeah, like, you got
um,
to put him in there just to stay true to what he did.
right. So, that makes sense. And, some people that support the movie itself, they're like, well, Keel loved it. I'm like, well, of course he did. Listen, if they made a movie where I'm the main character, I don't give a fuck what it's
Right.
about. I'm gonna love it.
Okay. So the headline there is, attention seeker loves attention.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Really? Wow.
Wow. Weird. Holy shit. That does make it more credible.
So whatever. Like I said, when they come up with the series, whatever it's supposed to be about, like I've heard mixed things. We'll see. But I will watch it, and I hope it is the Mothman Prophecies as a series, because to me that makes more sense. So I think that would be really interesting, and I'll check it out. But as far as this movie goes, I don't hate it. I'll tell you this right now. I hated, and I talked about this on the show earlier. I hated Polar Express. I don't hate this. So
Well, yeah. I mean, any human being with a soul should hate the movie Polar Express. It's creepy as fuck.
yeah,
Like, okay, Mothman Prophecies movie has some eerie scenes, but Polar Express is just terrifying.
yeah, that's
Like,
that's a nightmare. Like,
yes, the uncanny valley from whatever that fucking animation was
yeah,
is nightmare fuel.
yeah. There's definitely worse movies that I've watched this season so far than the Mothman Prophecies. It's just, it's not going on my Christmas classics list, and I know people would expect that from the Mothman lady, but it's not. I just don't have that attachment to it like other people do, and hey, that's okay. That's all right. I liked the mean one more than the Mothman Prophecies, so that's
Totally
my
fair.
closing remarks there.
So, in closing, you don't hate the podcast if you are a big fan of the Mothman Prophecies movie, because I'm going to have my official stance be that it's good, in opposite of Asher's stance. So we will balance each other out.
Fair enough.
and, and essentially we'll come to like a neutral place, and then everybody can just enjoy whatever they want.
Right, exactly. Yes, if people like it, great, good for you, wonderful. Like I said, as a thriller, it's not a bad movie. Just you guys have to understand, I did the research first, and had I seen the movie first, and had that been my introduction to it, maybe I'd feel differently. But it's just not. So that's where we're at. All right. Well, moving on to some news. Would you like some news?
Oh boy, I mean, I guess.
I got some fun
Yes, of
news.
course, news.
Okay, so this one's kind of silly, kind of fun, kind of a little change. Actually, they both are. They're both kind of fun stories, right? This is your guys' Christmas episode. Because actually, I guess I'll say that now. The next two episodes after this one releases, we're not going to be here. We're not going to be here this week or these 2
Oh yeah.
weeks. I am taking a break for the holidays, and that is my gift to myself. But we will be back first week of January, first Wednesday of January. Well, that's not true because I'm taking that week off too. We will be back on. Let me find a date for you guys here. My bad. It's gonna be January 10th. The show resumes, and we get back into regularly scheduled topics. So very neat. Anyway, back to our wholesome news for this week. The first one I want to talk about is this fucking cat. Okay, this fucking cat. There's a cat. Her name's Coco. All right. She lives in Newfoundland, Canada. And the cat does what cats do, and she climbed up a utility pole and she got stuck, right? So a utility worker comes out and decides that, he's going to get this cat out of the pole, which, by the way, let me tell you guys, I'm in Dayton, Ohio, and I do animal rescue. Utility workers, firemen, and police will not come out to rescue a cat from up a high. You have to actually call a tree service. If you ever encounter the situation, call a tree service. They will come out with their equipment. They'll get the cat down. Anyway, in this story, utility worker comes and is trying to get the cat down. And while he's climbing the pole, the cat, Coco, she takes a dive. In cat fashion, she would rather fucking die than be touched by this utility worker. So she jumps, and she was fine. She jumps down from the pole, jumps into her house, and starts immediately cleaning herself like nothing happened. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that insane that cats have that? I mean, they say that, right? A cat that jumps, out of a second story window, they're always going to land on their feet, right? They always land on their feet, and they actually do. Do you have any idea what the science is behind that?
On cats' ability to land on their feet, I think they
Yeah,
just have really good reflexes. Like they're just very agile.
I think that they put peanut butter on their paws nightly. Because
Okay.
when you drop a piece of bread with peanut butter on it, it will always fall peanut butter side down.
Right. Well, doesn't that make sense though? Because isn't that side of the bread slightly
Heavier.
heavier than the other side? So it should influence probability, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
make it more
cats'
likely to.
paws aren't heavier than the backside of their body.
No, I just think they're super athletes. Seriously, like I mean, I like sports. I watch a good amount of football, and like if you see some of the things that like human beings can do, it just in midair and how fast like we can move, and we got nothing on cats.
I know,
Cats
right?
are built to be so much more athletic than any human being could ever be.
Yeah.
That yeah, I don't know, it makes total sense to me. They've got superpowers. That's animals for you,
And
but they're
it's no
not
wonder.
smart like us. So, you know,
Yeah.
they
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 can't.
don't get movies and comic books and all that cool shit.
Yeah, they don't read books. It's but I don't know which ability would I rather have: be able to jump from impossible heights or be able to read books. I kind of like both. I don't. I thought it was really wholesome and hilarious that, like I said, the cat would rather die than let the utility worker get it, and it took its fucking chances.
Look, would I jump off of a utility pole to avoid being touched by a stranger? Maybe. I can't say for sure I wouldn't.
I mean, fair enough. Is he cute? I don't know. Yeah, so it's super neat. I thought that was neat. We had a cat. I didn't have a cat one time. My neighbor had a cat who jumped out of the two-story windows. It was just a little tiny kitten, and they had the window open. They never thought it would jump out. Well, it did, and it was fine. They're fine. And so I don't know. I think I think cats are cool. Cats are just neat, and I just wanted to remind you guys how neat they were with that fun story.
Yeah.
Um, the next one's a little more interesting because it has to do with aliens. Believe it or not,
Hmm.
on this show, aliens, huh? So SETI, right? You've heard of them. The
I
search
sure
for
have.
extraterrestrial intelligence. They're important people. They actually partnered up with the Alaskan Whale Foundation and the University of California to this is what they decided to do. They wanted to have a conversation with a whale. Okay. And the reason for this was to kind of experiment with what it would be like to finally speak with extraterrestrial life, right? Because they're not going to come down here and speak English, you know? How are we going to talk to them when they get here? So they decide to try to have this conversation with a whale. So they did. They go out into the ocean and they put out like a whale calling card, like a whale greeting, like, hello. And a whale friend comes over and starts fucking having a conversation with them.
Hmm.
And so they're like going back and forth. They've got different whale noises that they're playing and like different sounds and tones and things that they're trying to match whale speak. And the whale is responding back to them, and I don't know what the fuck they talked about. SETI doesn't know what they talked about, but the fact that they were able to hold some type of back and forth with something that, because we don't really have that now, right? We have a translator for every language that's spoken amongst humans, right? We
Uh,
can figure it out. When it came to whales, we don't have that, right? We don't know what they're saying. So the fact that we were able to have some type of conversation with them, regardless of the fact that we don't know what it was really interesting. And I don't know if they're going to try to kind of perfect that more, of how they're going to, if they intend on communicating with the whales more to see if they can't try to kind of understand what they're saying. The whale even blowed bubbles at them, which is another form of communication. And I found that interesting because let me tell you something about bubbles and fish. A lot of the times that's a type of mating call. So the whale was attracted to them. The whale was flirting with them.
hmm.
I don't know. I
Well, as
don't know.
hilarious as that is, well, I guess like how sure are they that they were actually having a conversation? Because it sounds like if they don't even know what they were saying,
Right.
then this is a little early to to be so sure that you're actually having an actual conversation with this whale. Kind of reminds me of, okay, do you remember Coco, the gorilla that used sign
Yes.
language?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I grew up, like, one of my favorite books when I was a kid was Coco's Kitten. Man, I read and reread that. It's like a children's book. It's like 50
Yeah.
pages long, probably. Lots of photos of this gorilla cuddling with a kitten. And so, like, there were people who thought that she was capable of communicating, had
Right.
use of this language. And of course, there are plenty of other opinions that really she wasn't communicating in the way that we would conceive of it. It was
Right.
more of just sort of mimicking behavior, learning through like a reward system that
Right.
certain signs would evoke a particular response. Although I guess, like, my response to that is, I mean, don't we all do that?
Right.
Isn't that what language is to some extent? Like,
Yeah.
when I say some words, hoping to evoke a response, and if I don't get the response I want, then I don't do that again.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
Listen, I'll say this. I'm a Coco stan. Okay.
Oh hell yeah,
That's my shit right there. I'd love to do an episode on Coco, because I think that is super fascinating, and I think that she was talking and showed emotion appropriately. And I watched that documentary. I know. I remember when she was sad about the woman's miscarriage. Okay.
right?
And I'll never forget it. So, but I agree with you. Yes, isn't that what a conversation is? Not just happenstance. I mean, it could be that. Well, it could be that the SETI people were flirting with the whale, and the whale was just like, "All right, I mean, if you're down, I'm down."
That whale's down to clown. Yeah.
He's like, "Okay, I'll show you my bubbles." And that was it. And then they laughed, and he's like, "Okay," they ghosted him.
That poor whale. Just like, what was even the point of this? You
Right.
come to my house, get me all turned on, and then you just leave? You
Just
guys are the
leave.
worst.
You're not even real.
Totally.
The whale got catfished.
100%. I'm on Team Whale. Those SETI people are fucking assholes.
Yeah, I mean, but no, I know what you mean. Like, how do they know they're having a conversation with the whale? Well, that's a good question. They should be able to replicate this, right? That's science.
Right.
If you were actually having whale conversations, and we can, but hold on, let's go back and talk about like the aspect of aliens.
Okay.
Like what this has to do with aliens. I kind of get, I'm kind of picking up what they're putting down, but like, I don't know. I don't think that's going to help us. Like, do you see the benefit here?
Well, I think it's interesting, and it sounds like to me, as a sci-fi nerd, like the first steps towards something like a Star Trek Universal Translator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where we're trying to figure out the rudimentary concepts behind communicating with another species that might be capable of language. And so I think that it is important. I think it's a scientifically valid area of inquiry. And I do think that learning more about how this process works, or how it might work, can only be good. Like, if you are anticipating speaking with another sapient species, at some point, yeah, you're going to have to figure out how to learn a non-human language, which is
Yeah.
not something we have any experience in currently.
Yeah.
And so I think what they might be doing is approaching it from the standpoint of maybe meeting another sapient species that isn't light years ahead of us in terms of scientific advancement and technology and everything. Because I would assume that if you are scientifically advanced enough to get here from anywhere else, because boy, is that a fucking tall order, even if it's only
Right.
like a dozen light years, that's still an impossible goal for us. If you're so advanced that you can do that, you could probably figure out human language. You could
Right.
probably
Sure.
speak English or French or Swahili or whatever you needed to speak, and it wouldn't be that tough.
Yeah.
um, and so this has to be for us meeting somebody at our level, or somewhere in that range where maybe they don't already know how to do that, because
I think
otherwise, yeah.
it's very arrogant, of us
Okay.
to assume that like they're going to come all the way here and like we're going to be the ones that have to communicate with them. Like we don't get that choice. First of all, second of all, they probably already know how to talk to us. Well, and that's just let's say that all contactees, right, who claim to have conversations with these things, right? Clearly, they have some form of communication, and if the math is mathin', then these things talk telepathically anyway. So they don't really need to know language if they know what your thoughts are, right? You think?
True. Well, yeah, no, that very well could be. I think that this is something that we've seen with SETI time and time again, where they just take like the fucking biggest loser approach to all of this shit, and it's so irritating.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this is the same organization who doesn't want anything at all to do with any of the data surrounding UFO sightings
Right.
or supposed alien contacts or anything that already exists. Because in their fucking scientific ivory tower, they've already decided that none of it has any value.
Right.
So to expect them to finally do something cool now, I mean, come on, Charlie Brown. Like, Lucy is gonna pull the ball away every time.
Right.
Okay.
Every single time.
Yeah. That's
Well,
just who they are.
I just hope this is my hope for the future. That aliens come here and some fucking jerk off scientist or, even somebody from SETI, right? Put somebody from MUFON, who cares? Approaches the aliens and starts talking to them like Dory does to the whales and Finding Nemo. That's my hope. That's what I think they're doing.
Okay. Yeah.
And the aliens are like, yeah, we're gonna leave again.
Right.
Maybe we'll come back in another 50,000 years. Whatever. We'll check on you then. That's what I envision. I guess like when you start saying it, you're like, well, yeah, humans, right? We can talk to each other. We can get a translator. We know every single human language. We have code crackers even that can crack, decipher secret codes that humans make. But so there isn't like another species we can talk to. So who's the next one? Well, I guess we'll go to whales. They talk. Why whales? I don't know. Other animals talk too. You
Well, I
know.
think whales are supposed to be pretty smart. That has to be that has to have something to do with why they were chosen, right? I mean, my dogs are smart, but like they don't. That's not how they communicate. You know what I mean? They don't communicate through speech because they're
Yeah.
fucking dogs, and they don't even have they aren't capable of making the right sounds even if they were wanted like even if they wanted to, even if somehow they figured out the human language, right? um so yeah, I
No
would.
animal, no animal really has that. You know what I mean? Except for
True.
parrots. The parrots, I think, would be like my first. Some type of bird of prey would be like my first go to because like I don't know, whales just seem complicated. You gotta go to the ocean, you gotta find one, and
Yeah.
then we don't even know what the fuck they're talking about when they're talking anyway. Like there's so much about whale speak we don't understand.
You know what?
Um,
I
it's
bet
weird.
SETI would be those kinds of people who would go out of their way to tell you that your pets aren't smart and you don't communicate with them.
That
Like
does check
that's
out.
I bet
Yeah,
they're those people. And that which is just the fucking worst. Like just the least fun at parties.
yeah,
And I bet that they're like the only other species that's close enough to human intelligence on this planet is whales.
yeah.
And
It's gotta
we
be
know
whales.
that because nobody else likes us. So we're going to go all the way into the ocean to try to find somebody who does. Hopefully it's whales.
And it turns out at least the one whale did like them.
That's
And then
true. It showed him its weird whale boner or whatever. So,
yeah, which people say are responsible for sea monster sightings. So
oh yeah, that's right.
this is all coming full circle. Anyway, that's what I got this week for the news. Did you have any news? I know you write news, so I guess I should start asking you
I
if
do.
you have any.
Honestly, I have been so busy with the new book coming out that I have not been keeping up like I normally would. Usually, when a new book comes out, I take off,
Mhm.
like a week, 2 weeks or so, because you have to go and you have to do all of the podcasts and radio shows and stuff.
And you have
And
been, yeah,
I have, yeah. This is my 10th like recording session since November 30th, I think.
yeah. Wow.
Which it's so much. I'm so tired. I'm glad. I'm honestly so happy that this is the last one because it's what I consider the easiest and most fun one. And
Yeah.
so like if I had to try to be coherent for somebody right now, oh god, no. No, there's no way. Impossible.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I understand. That's why I'm taking 2 weeks off myself. I
Oh
get it.
yeah. No, well you have to. You have to. Oh, actually I do want to ask you, did this was the last article that I did for the Singular Fortean Society, and this is another one where some people got kind of, oh boy, just upset, I guess is the right word. Although there are a lot of people who take themselves way too seriously and they kind of give their opinions way too much weight, and they don't know how to just kind of sit back and look at something, and try to examine it objectively rather than get all up in their feelings about it or whatever. But it was those, and I don't know if you saw these. There were these photographs that somebody had released anonymously on 4chan,
Yes.
and I know better, obviously, than to be like, oh well, this has to be aliens, you guys. It was released anonymously on 4chan. What else could it be? But it was getting enough traction on social media. Like I kept seeing it on Reddit, and there's thousands of people interacting with these photos. And so I was like, okay, well, time to write like a short article on it and just kind of get out what we know. Because as you and I both know, it's only a matter of time. Anytime somebody releases something anonymously on 4chan, it's only a matter of time until it starts popping up on other social media with wholly contrived narratives
Oh yeah.
that are attached to it, you know? And so I was like, well, before that happens, this is interesting enough. I'll write an article on it so everybody knows the provenance of these photos. Like they'll know where they first popped up here. So when somebody tries to say that, oh, hey, I found these in my uncle's attic after he passed away or something, you'll know that they're full of shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, like there were people who just got upset about it. Like you're just not even allowed to discuss these things because apparently it's just beneath ufology to ever even consider discussing something like these photographs released on 4chan. Which I just did not get, because I'm like, if you think any part of ufology is somehow more serious than this, then boy, life is going to be hard
Oh
for
yeah.
you. You know, like holy shit, good luck.
Now, I will say,
Yeah,
if you guys want to check out the photos, I'll post the link directly to the article here in the description. They were initially really compelling photos, right? They look pretty good, you
they
know.
look weird, but they could just be, you know,
Right.
burnt or well, yeah, heavily damaged human bodies or human remains, which I get. And that was some people's what I think that's what made some people angry was it's like, oh, well, you can't just go around showing photographs of these poor people. And it's like, well, there are a couple of possibilities. You know, either they are some non-human recovered remains, or they're not. And if they're not, then by the appearance of these photographs, they've already been published in a book or something somewhere. And so I don't understand why it is somehow disrespectful to share these when you are explaining the context in which you found them, and
Hmm.
then explaining the arguments against the narratives that
Right.
have been developed around these photographs. You know, so if you're explaining, hey, some people are trying to say that these are aliens, but here's what other people are saying. You know, here are some more down to earth explanations. That feels like the opposite of disrespectful. That feels
Right.
like the most respectful thing that you could do. So I again, people in ufology just continue to be so far up their own asses sometimes. I just
Yeah.
don't get it.
No, I agree. You know, well, and right, it's definitely displaced anger, right? Your anger should be at the person spreading it as if they are alien bodies, you know,
Right.
especially if these are human beings, you know, if these are actual people. But I mean, they could be a myriad of things. Like I said, as far as you know, when you initially see them, you're like, wow. And then you're like, wait a minute, those hands look kind of weird and the whole thing's kind of weird. And are we sure they're aliens? You know, it does give you pause, right? It's better than that security footage we talked about last time, you know, but
Yeah.
still not extremely clear. You know, what was interesting about it is that 4chan and, you know, for all you guys that have been hanging on for the brand new shows, I may be discussing something similar in the future. 4chan has this like urban legend about the absolute best photo of an alien ever posted. And the only place it was ever posted was 4chan. And the post mysteriously disappeared before anybody could save the image. And
Yes.
that's
And now
been
you
going around
see
for years.
so many imitators of that where people are
Yes.
like, I think I found the actual image. And it's never the actual image.
No.
But there's so many versions of that floating around where people are
Yeah.
like, is this the real alien image from 4chan? And it never is
It
because
never
there
is.
never was one.
Right. It never existed. Yeah. I mean, because listen, it is the internet and it is 4chan. Let me tell you something. There's people that sit on 4chan all day long that just you know, take a screenshot of the screen all day, every post, all the time. Like if it actually happened, somebody took a picture of it. Like, you know. But because it didn't happen. It's kind of one of those urban legend things. So to see more alien photos pop up on 4chan, you know, immediately my you know, my red flag is raised. I'm like, I don't think so. I can't say for has anybody come through with source material or people saying they're human? Because I think it's more AI.
I haven't seen any actual explanation. And that's the other part of this. Like we both know how these things go. They pop up. They are popular for, you know, a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month at the absolute most, and then they just disappear. But usually the cycle is very short, so
Yeah.
it's measured in days rather than weeks. And so I haven't seen anything on these otherwise. In terms of AI, you can't rule it out. You
Right.
absolutely cannot in this day and age. It doesn't matter how good it looks. You can never rule it out. I did show these to Emily,
Right.
and you know she's better qualified than most to spot that. And so
Yeah.
there were some things that stood out to her that made her, well, there are some things that stood out that um, made it seem as though it might not be AI. So, although the real bitch about it is, and this is why I say like you can never rule out AI, is it's possible to cover the things that we're missing. And so, like for instance, something she was looking at was sort of the overall consistency of the photographs. And so there weren't. Let me see if I can find her actual quote.
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, so just looking at what she actually told me, because again, she knows way more about this than than I actually do. Um, was so she looked at the images and they seemed consistent throughout, and any imperfections in them sort of matched the rest of the photograph. And so that's not something you usually see with AI. However, you can mask AI by running it through filters
Yeah.
that will make the photograph more consistent, you know. So that's a possibility, I ran it through like three different AI programs online, and they all kind of came back saying that there was a low percentage chance of it being AI. But again, if somebody had taken steps specifically to mask the red flags that pop up with AI photos, then those programs would probably rate it as having a low
Right.
percentage chance, whether it was AI or not. So at this point, I mean, fuck, believe whatever you want, like maybe it is AI, maybe it isn't. We don't have any way of proving it
Yeah.
one way or the other, unfortunately.
Yeah, at this point. I mean, your critical thinking line would take you down to it's probably some type of hoax of some point of some caliber, whether they're using images of human remains, whether they're using AI images. It probably is some type of hoax just because there's really no good backstory to it. Which is kind of where I start, and 4chan's not the most credible. I already said this. It wasn't in the Weekly World News, right? So we know it's not real.
Oh yeah, obviously.
That's,
He's a
right.
legitimate news source.
Right. We know these things. But yeah, no, I mean, take it however you guys want to take it. But there's no definitive proof for or against it right now. It seems you're free to believe whatever you want, and I said so, and I'm the authority. So
There you go. You heard it here first.
you heard it here first. But no, very interesting. Actually, you know what? I have not come across those in the wild anywhere, and I'm shocked by that. But I also haven't really I haven't like been paying too much to like social media, what with the holidays and stuff. So maybe
Right.
it's just slipped my eye. But yeah, I haven't seen them yet. Because I know I'd enjoy the threads, the comments about them. People making up their own origin stories for it. So you know how
Exactly.
it goes. Well, let's why don't we why don't we get into some Christmas spirit? Are you ready to talk about your book for the last time this year, it sounds like?
I am. I am. Like I said, I am so happy that I get to end on this show rather than any other,
Yeah.
because this is my 10th one, and I don't mean that to bring okay, I don't mean that to say like I'm not bringing the fire here or anything, because I'm stoked, like I'm ready to get into it. I just mean that I tend to be so much more relaxed and have so much more fun on this
Mhm.
show than I do any other, that I can't picture a show I would rather have be my last, because it'll be the most fun.
Well, good. And
So
this one's
there.
going to be a little bit different because we've already kind of talked about your book here.
True.
So I kind of wanted to get more into a little bit of the meat. I mean, I want to leave something up for people to read, and spoiler alerts, I might let you tell a tale or two about it. There are Santa Claus sightings in this book, and I don't want to go over every single one. And I
Yeah,
want you guys to read it yourself because that is just like I said up front. I'm just gonna say that's so fucking magical right there, like straight up. That is like the cream of the crop right there. That is wow, what a way to end a book, about these types of things. So, but let's go ahead and start from the beginning here.
sure.
Tobias, why did you decide to write a book about Yuletide lore?
Yeah. So, honestly, Christmas has always been my favorite holiday. Everybody expects it to be Halloween, right? But it's not. It never has been. I like Halloween. It's fine. But Christmas has always been it for me. There's just something about this time of year that is wondrous. It's just a special time of year, and our ancestors knew that. Like so many of them uh, always placed a special significance on this time, and so I've been wanting to write something about uh, weird Christmas, for some time, and I had seen this resurgence in the popularity of certain folk traditions like Krampus and similar over
Right,
the past several years. And then I started seeing other people writing uh, uh, weird Christmas books, and they would usually just kind of be like lists of things, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But at this point, in looking at the subject, I was like, well, okay, well, that already exists. Like many people at this point already have books that are just going to walk you through some of these holiday legends, and maybe they will trace them back to their pre-Christian origins, and that'll probably be about the extent of it. And again, that's cool, and I'm not talking shit about anybody else's work. Like there's a place for that. We need that. But what we didn't need was another book like that. And
right.
so when I was really nailing down what I wanted this book to be about, I remember I kept seeing people online that I knew talking about like Santa Claus sightings. And that was so interesting to me. And I was like, well, shit, like that deserves further research. Like somebody needs to look into this. Like how many of these weird holiday sightings really like are there? And so I kind of put out this call for holiday sightings from anybody who had experienced anything. It didn't have to be Christmas; it could be anything. And I ended up with, let's see, two possible Santa Claus sightings and like three Easter Bunny sightings. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but the fact that it wasn't nothing was enough for me to be intrigued. And so I
Mhm.
thought, well, that's the book, right? It is taking these Christmas legends and researching their history and their origin, and then comparing them to high strangeness events and other paranormal phenomena that people still
Mhm.
claim to experience, and looking for similarities. And the interesting thing was there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
A lot of these Christmas legends did not start as Christmas legends. A lot of them started as other folklore that was kind of folded into this holiday later. And especially when viewed through that lens, there are remarkable similarities. Maybe there is some external source that inspired many of these legends that we just take for granted now, that we just look at as these silly stories. But they weren't always silly stories. They weren't always just fun, goofy tales to be told over the winter holiday. Like for much of our ancestors past, or at least most of my ancestors, I can't speak for anybody else listening, but for much of my ancestors past, these were characters that were very real, at least in the sense that people believed in them,
Yeah.
and that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I will say, a lot of the more obscure things that you discuss in the book, even though some of them aren't direct, well, actually a lot of them weren't directly citing reports that you had, but you had a lot of reports of this stuff in different sources, right? I did find that very interesting that there is a tie-in to all of these things and modern day stuff. We're not just talking about really old things. Some of these are
Right.
modern day reports of things that seem to be really old. you know, so that is really neat. So when you started writing it, when you go, okay, I'm going to make this book, I'm going to sit down and what was the first piece that you researched and wrote about?
I think it pretty much went in order. Now, there's always some overlap, right? So, generally speaking, anytime I'm writing any book, there will be information that for like say a previous chapter that's going to come in as I'm working on something later. It's inevitable, and you go back and you edit and revise and so on and so forth, and that's just the process. But in terms of the specific order in which things were researched and then laid out, I basically just went in order of the actual chapters. So I started with the Icelandic Yule cat,
Hmm.
and then I included the Yule goat with that because there is a sort of folkloric connection, at least in how uh, one Icelandic folklorist like categorizes those two characters,
Hmm.
and from there things kind of flowed naturally, because you get into anomalous big cat sightings, throughout Great Britain, in Australia, New Zealand, North America. Um, and the Goatman legend, like I said, and then you sort of get into similar characters to that, like Garula and Krampus, and then you got to talk about Sheep Squatch because that's too similar. Um,
Yeah.
you got to, so uh,
I like the inclusion of the sheep squatch, because
yeah,
that's one that I mean, where else are you going to talk about sheep squatch at?
you never get an opportunity.
Every chance you can to talk about sheep squatch, you got to take it.
Absolutely, hell yeah. And then and then I think that was probably like the biggest, or maybe the least connected or obvious or smooth segue then would have been from that into like all of the wild hunt stuff, um because those aren't, although like those characters too are similar enough when you look at the kinds of characters that like are said to lead the wild hunt, like
Mhm,
they're not so different. I mean, really, if you look at say like Frau Perkta leading her uh parade of dead children, right, or Lucy doing something very similar, and stealing bad kids away from their houses at night, that's not dissimilar necessarily from Krampus entering people's homes, beating naughty children with sticks, and then throwing them in his basket to take them to the underworld. Like
mhm,
that is a a clear similarity. And so like if those kinds of characters, if like Frau Perkta and Lucy are included in the wild hunt tradition, then Krampus has to at least be adjacent to that.
right.
And so yeah, like going from like Krampus and them, and well, then obviously Sheep Squatch, and then into Wild Hunts, I guess, isn't that awkward of a segue. But it was probably the the most distinct sort of gap, I guess, in phenomena. But yeah, then I got right into the wild hunt, which of course was great. And there's so many traditions for that, and so much just amazing like UFO lore and alien abduction lore that falls in line with those traditions. Like the wild hunt is, and I'm never going to be that guy who sits here and it's just like, oh man, like wild hunt, totally aliens. Because something that we tend to fall into way too often is the idea that people in the past were all fucking stupid and we are super, super smart right now. When the reality is, we are also very stupid and we do the same stupid thing that humans have been doing since forever,
Yeah.
which is creating narratives around things we don't understand.
Oh yeah.
So, for anybody who hasn't heard of the wild hunt, probably the most common version of that. So, this is a a legend that arose out of the Germanic pre-Christian holiday of Yule, and it was said during this time of year, which nowadays is considered to be, around the solstice and Christmas. But as far as we know, Yule was probably celebrated in January sometime. It's hard to tell because, nobody kept written records, or Germanic tribes didn't keep any kind of written record. Everything we know about him was written by like Roman historians
Yeah.
and Christian monks and shit. And so sometimes, you have to take that with a grain of salt, and a lot of stuff just wasn't written down. Anyway, so during Yule, people would tell stories of the wild hunt, and it was traditionally led by Odin, the Norse god, the All Father, right, king of the Norse gods, and he would lead, or he was said to lead this spectral hunt. So he would take some of his spirit warriors out of Valhalla, right, and he would lead them on this hunt. And so, if you heard the wind howling, right, if you could hear that wind howling, it might not be just the wind; it might be Odin leading this wild hunt. So probably not a great idea to go outside because you super did not want to encounter this. Now, Odin wasn't an evil god, but he was capricious, and so, if you didn't catch him in the right mood or he didn't judge you to be worthy, then he would absolutely just fucking ruin your day. Maybe your whole life. Who knows?
Sure.
And, you know, and so it was best to be avoided. And you see that in almost every, well, actually, certainly every iteration of the wild hunt that I've seen. And there are many, from Frau Perkta and her Parade of Dead Children to the Asgardsrea, which is actually Norwegian for Asgard's Ride, and traditionally would be, Odin leading this wild hunt, but there are versions of it that are literally just little people who live underground who come up on like Christmas Eve and just like wreak havoc. They'll just like come into your house and throw shit
Mhm.
around and eat all your food. They don't care. And so it's so interesting to see the variations of it too, where you've got this thing literally called Asgard's Ride that no longer has Odin in it for some reason. It's just fairies fucking shit up. But in anyway, like there are obvious similarities between that kind of stuff and modern UFO lore. For instance, like when I read a particular story about the Asgardsrea, it reminded me so much of like Whitley Strieber's first remembered abduction experience. So basically, this story it's actually laid out word for word in my book. So if you want to read it, you can read the entirety of it. But it's basically about this troop of underground dwellers that comes up every Christmas Eve and just invades like this family's home. And so this family like has to leave their home every Christmas Eve because this troop of mischievous fairies is just going to take over their whole house. And that just reminded me so much of, well, from kind of start to finish, like Strieber waking up in his cabin that night. I think it was December 26th, right? And so the day after Christmas, to what he described as a like a loud whooshing noise, you know, and and next thing you know, he's got these diminutive beings in his house. They are, um, more or less running unchecked. Like they this is the experience where like they supposedly took him out of bed and like flew him bodily to like some other area, which is another thing that has similarities to these wild hunts. Like there are stories of people running into or encountering these wild hunts and being taken somewhere else. You might be abducted by the wild hunt or the beings behind it. You might experience missing time. You might wake up somewhere, you know, distant from where you encountered it with no idea how you got there. And so, like everything in his narrative of events, I would look at and be like, well, shit, all of this exists in different versions of the
Mhm.
wild hunt, which is weird as hell. There's
Yeah.
got to be something to that. And again, I don't mean that to say that like, oh, the wild hunt must be aliens. Um, what I mean to say is something that we might want to consider is that the stories of the wild hunt are indicative of the same phenomenon that we still don't understand having occurred for hundreds and hundreds of years and being folded into uh, these cultures and becoming stories that eventually got folded into Christmas because of the Christianization of Yule, and now we have these Christmas stories, and we kind of flippantly disregard them. But it's possible at least some of them came from a very real place, you know.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. A lot of the well, like, you're kind of mentioning the when you're talking about the wild hunts. I think of the like the Yule lads when I think of like mischievous creatures. Because they are, I don't know. It's like a tale as old as time, and it's not just surrounding Christmas. It's still around. It's still rampant. It's just it continues to shift and form with us as a culture, depending on where we need those lessons. The immediate umbrella term I think that everybody can relate to on a lot of these things is the Fae, right? The Fae aren't all great. They're not all bad either. But a lot of these symbols are kind of the same. It's just the same phenomena. I
Sure.
over and over again. Um, so I can definitely see the trend there, and I think it's neat that you are bringing attention back to these older stories, and you really do like deep dive the history here. Good for you. I
Thank you. That's fun for me. I don't think you can really even begin to scratch the surface of understanding something unless you do your absolute damnedest to understand its origin. It's kind of like
yeah.
I say, to really understand John Keel, you have to read Charles Fort,
Mhm.
because you really can't understand where Keel was coming from unless you understand his primary influence. And it's like that with these stories. You kind of have to understand the traditions out of which they arose to to understand them on a level that would allow you to compare them to something else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, And so yeah, that's always super interesting to me. And it's interesting that you bring up fairies too, because one thing, this always drives me nuts when people try to categorize fairies,
Yeah.
because to me that shows their abject ignorance of actual fairy traditions and folklore, because fairies were really a catch-all fucking term for
Yeah.
any weird ass thing that people
Yep.
didn't understand. And so the phenomena that is uh, uh, that can be witnessed throughout fairy lore, like it runs the gamut from everything from like UFOs to ghosts and hauntings to poltergeists. And it's because it was uh, well, that's how mythology works, right? It was a way to try to, well, viewed from a certain angle, I'll say, because I shouldn't speak like definitively, because at the end of the day, we don't have any proof that any of this is happening other than our own experiences and the experiences of others, which doesn't technically count as proof. But anyway, so it viewed from a certain angle, it was a way for people to explain a variety of phenomena that they didn't understand. And so if you saw weird balls of light out in the forest, fairies. If shit was flying around your house, fairies. If you saw some weird creatures out as you were, walking through the forest one night and you experienced missing time and woke up in a totally different area, also fucking fairies, I
Yeah.
guess. Because what other explanation do you got at that point,
Yep.
And so people will be like, oh, well, fairies are nature spirits. And I'm like, you know what? You're a fucking nature spirit. Like, none of this makes sense. Like, don't tell me you know what fucking fairies are, because fairies are just a word that people needed to
Right.
use to explain shit that they didn't understand. We still don't
Mhm.
understand. And if you say that you do understand it, I lose all respect for you, because you are either mentally unwell or a liar. Like, come on.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I could see people being led incorrectly, with bad information, and that's where they come to that. But it's like
That
that
did seem
quote.
harsh. You're right.
Yeah, asshole. I'm just kidding. No,
Right.
it's that quote. If you say that you understand quantum mechanics and you clearly don't understand quantum mechanics,
Mhm.
it's that. Yes, it's the same deal, and that's what I'm saying. The umbrella term for really all of this is kind of it's the same thing. For all of these, you could definitely throw them into that category. But yes, I know exactly what you mean. Um, so we deal with it a lot. Don't even get me started on elementals. I
Oh, it comes up all the time. You get these people who probably have never even heard of fucking, like, Margaret Murray, uh, like the basically don't even understand where their beliefs come from, which is that's why it's so important to know the history of everything. So
right.
if somebody comes at me with a bunch of new age pagan nonsense or something, I can just be like, well, look, I understand that you believe this. I even understand why you believe it. But what you need to understand is that everything you think you know about witches and witchcraft probably can all be traced back to this 19th century Egyptologist who, while well intentioned, got literally every fucking thing wrong about European history because she wasn't really qualified to talk about it. And people still believe it today because it ended up being used by some mid century fucking hippies who wanted to get naked in the woods, who invented even extra bullshit to layer on top of her bullshit that already we knew wasn't true. And so now you've got this whole tradition of quote unquote witchcraft that has about as much in common with real history as fucking Star Wars.
Yeah.
So, like, no, dude, just
And then
don't even at me with that,
they're the
you
same
know?
people that bitch about like, "Whoa, man, the history books in school are lying to you," and it's like, yeah, yeah, you would know, huh?
Right. Like, have you read one? Like, are you sure? Yeah.
And I mean, but that is, the unfortunate part about history is that, it is a big task to take it on and backtrack all of these and date them as far back as you can. That's why I have a historical researcher, because I have my ADHD will not let me sit down and really build a timeline on my own without having some other influence outside of myself to do that.
Mhm.
And I can't just put all my trust in some person, some stranger, right? And just go read a book about it and be like, well, they must know what they're talking about. They wrote a book about it, not saying that I'm saying I find you credible, right? So I trust your sources, but I can't speak for everybody, you know. But
Oh
that's
yeah.
why I have a researcher who does fact check that stuff for me.
Right.
But I get not everybody does.
Well, that's the thing too. Like I wouldn't expect anybody to trust any source implicitly, like
No.
even when
Yeah.
I'm researching something and I'm laying it all out in a book, I'm saying, hey, this is what this folklorist thinks about
Right.
the origin of this story, and they don't all agree, and I make sure to point that out. Like there are different interpretations, or this is what this 19th century folklorist wrote down about this particular legend. And that just happens to be currently the oldest reference we have to
Right.
that legend. I'm not saying that this is something that, I'm not asking anybody to invest faith in this. I'm just saying, hey, this is what we know about this right now.
Well, and there's
And
no
take that for what you will.
Right, there's no facts in folklore, first of all, I mean, that's why it's folklore,
Right.
you know? So when we're trying to study it and really look at it and then also make comparisons to stuff that we believe may be happening, right? That's even harder. It's an even harder, gap to fill there. But that's why you do take it from multiple sources and, but that's also and the beauty of it on the flip side of that that's how you're able to dig out things that you kind of know are bullshit, like the Blackbird of Chernobyl. you
Yeah.
know, if you didn't track that timeline and find where that earliest reference came from, then it could be anything. It could be something, but because we have an origin for it, we can kind of say, yeah, this probably came from here, most likely, and that's that. So it's very important. It's very important to build that timeline. And if you're somebody listening to the show and you're interested in researching or getting better at researching, you always try to start at the beginning. You try to work backwards and go to the earliest possible point that you can, and then build off of it from there, which is a lot of work. It's a lot of reading books and finding the source material and backtracking. It is a lot. So that's what I'm saying. You've done a very impressive job of doing that here. Because there are a lot of like timelines at play and not just timelines at play, but timelines pertaining to different cultures. And I think that's really, really fascinating. And man, that's dedicated.
Yeah. Thanks. I have to say it's a lot easier now with the internet because we have access
Yeah.
to all of these like online archives and databases and stuff that make it so much easier to research. The real heroes are everybody who had to do this pre-internet, everybody who just had to
Ooh,
go, yeah, who had to
yeah.
like go down to like the historical society or spend countless hours searching like through the stacks at their library or something. Because like I did very relatively little time doing that because so much of the legwork could just easily be done online, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is the source I need, and here it is, great. It's like we live in an age of miracles, I guess, is basically what I'm getting at. Like it makes it so much easier to research stuff, which is why nobody has an excuse anymore, by the way. Like if you believe in a
Yeah.
bunch of nonsense, like that's on you. You have the entirety of human knowledge in your fucking
Right.
pocket right now, probably. You should know better.
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on.
I
Shame on
agree.
you.
So, like, if ghosts are dead people, and I'm not gonna get on this tangent, right? Because
Uh,
I don't think ghosts are dead people. Everybody here knows that already. Whatever. Um, but if ghosts are dead people, can you imagine being like a historical folklorist or researcher and then looking at today and being so fucking mad of how easy we have it?
yeah, just like shaking in like ethereal rage. as a ghost.
Like
It's
my
like, you have
life's
no
work was
idea what I had to do to research things.
right. I
Yeah.
had to do so many favors. I met this whale one time. It was crazy. You know, I can't imagine. Anyway, back to the book and the materials of the
Yeah.
book. Let's talk about the Goat Man for a minute. How about that?
Sure. Goat Man.
Goat Man, I think, is something. It makes sense in the context of the book, but I think people just seeing the title, I think, would be surprised to learn that there is like Goat Man and Sheep Squatch in it. Um,
Sure.
and aliens, right? All of
And
these things are
aliens.
are in this book.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and talk about Goatman. I didn't know that you guys locally had a Goatman.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, though. Goatman is one of those, and I don't know if you would. I call everything a monster. I
Sure.
have more or less stopped using words like cryptid just because they can be so contentious. And so like when it comes to these kinds of monsters, right? Goatman is very much a product of urban legend,
Mhm.
or I should say, stories, especially local stories in most areas of Goatman are
Mhm.
very much products of urban legend, and that's not me trying to like discredit anyone's experience if they have seen something like that. And if they have, please reach out to me by email at info@singularfortean.com because I'd love to talk to you about it. But but that just is what it is. I mean, many of these Goatman legends sort of have the nebulous origins and lack of firsthand accounts that very much put them in the realm of uh, urban legend. You know, it just is what it is. But the character of Goatman, of course, is very interesting. And if you think of a goat human hybrid, like there is precedent for that in folklore, of course. You could go as far back as ancient Greece,
Mhm.
looking at satyrs and similar, right, to find that kind of chimeric being. And there is precedent for that in Yuletide traditions as well. You think of the Yule goat and some of the traditions that arose out of that. So, like there is a tradition known as Yule Backing, which uh, involves usually young men, and they might dress up as goats, and they might either waylay travelers and demand things, which I think is just called mugging, right? Or
It's what we
they,
call it now, yeah.
yeah, right.
I don't
That's
think they dress up like goats anymore, unfortunately, but
no. I have a goat hat, so I might just wear it and go mug somebody. And then
the
if I
next
get
time
caught,
you're
be like,
mugging.
yeah, yeah. Then I'll just be like, this is religious persecution. I mean, I'm Yule mocking right now, and frankly, I feel like you are singling me out. And no, but
It might work.
or yeah, right. Or they might go like door to door and do something similar, and that's more of a like traditional sort of endeavor that you see with like the Mary Lwyd
Mhm.
and similar traditions, and so they might go door to door and like ask for treats and stuff like that. But in like anyway, it all sort of stems from this inclusion of goat or goat human hybrid sort of creatures into traditional belief systems,
Mhm.
which is fascinating. And so you see those kinds of attributes when you look at the Icelandic Christmas ogre lady Grula or Krampus even. Um, you see the reflections of Goatman, right? But you also see some sheep squatch. But the other interesting part of Goatman is that it's not entirely urban legend. Like there are some firsthand accounts of sightings or encounters with something that bears that description. This human goat hybrid. And that's when things get really interesting for me. And when I start asking myself, well, if we go back into antiquity, certainly I could see the idea of current goat man sightings in terms of an urban legend having arisen out of this centuries long tradition. Well, really, millennia long tradition at this point of stories involving uh, human goat hybrid
Hmm.
beings.
Yeah.
But what if like what if there was some sort of external stimulus behind those stories?
Hmm.
Considering now it's not as often as say UFOs or Bigfoot or anything like that, but considering the fact that we still have at least a few people today who claim to have first hand experience with stuff like that, like
Yeah.
that's sort of that's the underpinning of the whole book, right?
My mom, we went to also see Christmas lights this weekend, and while we were driving down there, so our we have this like huge like haunted house attraction, and during the Christmas season, they'll actually transform it all into like Christmas lights, and it's actually really cute because they have like these like giants, like not like the giant skeletons out in people's lawns, but like statues that they'll like dress up Christmassy. Anyway, so it's like located in like spooky middle of nowhere, Ohio, right? And so while we're driving down there, there's a bridge or whatever, and my mom is like really trying to relate to me. And she's like, "Oh, it's Crybaby Bridge." I was like, "No, no, mom, it's Goat Man's Bridge now. Like that's the thing that people do." you know, just kind of relating it back to, like you said, kind of very urban legendy. But you do have people that claim to have these strange encounters with these goat-ish type creatures. I mean, there is some value to that. One of my favorite stories is the I think it's the Dancing Devil of San Antonio, Texas,
Hmm.
where a devilishly handsome man comes to this party, and they're all dancing, and he's so damn good at dancing, until the party all looks down at his feet, and he has cloven feet, and they find out he's Satan, obviously, you know.
Obviously.
Obviously. There was also I don't remember if this is they were either cloven feet or they were chicken feet, and the chicken feet is so fucking funny to me. I hope that that part is real. Um, but anyway, cloven feet are kind of part of it, and again, very goat-like attributes. You know, speaking of things that can kind of transform and be a little weirder than they seem on the surface, you talk about sheep squatch, and when you talk about sheep squatch, you can't talk about it without talking about the white the white thing, right, in West Virginia. So one thing that I will add to it, about the white thing, is that it's not just a sheep thing.
Mm.
The white thing is a multitude of things. People have seen it in many different forms. Actually, the number one reported sighting of it is like a white cat, like a feline type creature, or maybe even a fox type creature. But it seems to change, and it seems to have this weird, shape shifting factor to it. It is a really interesting phenomena, and so but sheep squatch is notoriously white, so then they associate it with being the same. It's the same thing, same
Right.
phenomena. um but it doesn't really look that way. It just becomes that way depending on, we talked about this last time. Things can kind of you can perceive something as a certain way because of your preconceived, notions about what that might look like. And if you think you're seeing something evil, and goats, themselves, horned beasts have been considered evil for a very long time, that's what you're going to see, right?
Sure.
So interesting. And we did, I kind of I shared that post recently about the Pope Lick monster, Goat Man, right? And how tons of people die. And you did do a really good write up about people do actually die at this
Yeah.
Goat Man's bridge.
Stay off the Pope Lick Trestle Bridge, for
Right.
fuck's sake. Just don't,
Please.
just go anywhere else.
Just anywhere else. You can stand under it. You're
You
allowed.
can. I have.
You can't stand
Like
on it.
it's no, God, no. People die, and if you go there today, and this honestly is not funny. This is very sad. There is a makeshift memorial made
Oh
by
gosh.
one of the girls' families, who passed away from because of being on that bridge.
Yeah.
Uh, that is currently underneath it. So if you go, you'll see this makeshift memorial. I don't know what the fuck else you need to convince you to stay
Right.
off of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that girl is dead, and that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
stupendously sad and
It
did
is.
not need to happen.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and the problem with with this stupid bridge, there's actually two big problems. The first one is that people look at it and they don't think it is in active bridge. It is. Trust me. You might think it looks old. Tons of trains like use this thing all the time.
Yeah.
The second issue is there used to be safety platforms, um, but they took them down. And it's, I will never understand this.
What?
They took them down to discourage people from going up there. But it seems like all that has done is, just to make sure if you do go up there and a train comes, you are probably going to die
Yeah.
because there's no longer any safety platform where you can just step off.
Right. And you're not a cat, so you won't land on your feet when you jump down, you know?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
there is one guy who was up there with his girlfriend, and he managed. And again, this is profoundly sad and tragic. They were up there, and the train came, and she got hit, and he managed to dangle underneath it long enough, just hanging on because he was strong enough to. So he actually did survive, but his girlfriend didn't. Um, so I guess like if you want to test your luck that way, but boy, I don't think it's worth it.
No, that is no. Just stay the fuck off of the Goatman's
Yeah,
bridge
seriously,
anywhere,
just fucking
anywhere.
stay off of it. It's not
You
that
know.
hard. There's
No.
nothing up there. There's no goat man up there. I promise. I bet
Yeah.
you. I will bet you $1,000 there is no goat man up on this stupid bridge.
No.
So
I mean, he would have been hit by a train by now.
yeah, we would know if there was, because you're absolutely right. This fucking area would be littered with goat man corpses from
Right.
getting hit by trains if there was
Repeatedly.
one up on this bridge.
That's just facts. You even like mentioned, I like how you mentioned how like they even had issues finding conductors to take that route because it was traumatizing for them
Yeah.
to have to hit people all the fucking time, and so yeah, no, it is super dangerous. um if you don't understand it by now, I'm going to say it again, don't stand on that bridge. Don't do it. Just stay the fuck don't stay away from it. You can go out there,
Oh
just
yeah.
stand under it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like it's really interesting area. The bridge itself is, it's an interesting piece of architecture. Yeah, like
Sure.
because it's really high too. Like it is something else. Like it's neat to go look at. It's in an area that is, I mean, it's fairly rural. So you go out there and there's woods and like there are houses out there. Um, but there's lots of woods and stuff too, and so it's cool to go out and you're like, well, I get why this has like a creepy reputation, but
Yeah, it just seems like one of
yeah.
those areas. They did their first annual Public Monster Festival this year, so
Oh, really?
they're jumping on that train, and I don't blame them. It's been
Sure.
successful so far. So yeah, but yeah, that's but with that, is that going to draw more people to go stand on that fucking bridge? I hope
I
not.
hope not. Better
Yeah,
not.
well, we'll see. But yeah, so let's go ahead and let's get to the big one, the big man. Let's talk about Santa, huh?
Santa. All right. Well,
Santa Claus himself. Santa is special. I think it's everybody. I was gonna say every girl's, but I think it's everybody's first love. Santa Claus, right? If you grew up in America and you're not Jewish, or if you celebrate Christmas, right? That's your first.
yes.
It's a very exciting character to all of us, and I think that even well into adulthood, Santa is still very very special.
Oh,
Um,
for sure.
to
I
all of
think that
us.
at this point, I know enough people, and that includes, Jewish people or Hindu, Buddhist, whatever. Um, you don't have to be Christian to celebrate Christmas. I mean, it's
Yeah.
become so secularized at this point, which
Yeah.
I think on the whole is a good thing. I know, come at me, Christians complaining about Starbucks cups. You know, like
Well, they will.
yeah, this will become part of the fucking war on Christmas, I guess. But like the reality is, like, there have been celebrations this time of year since well before Christianity, and there will
Yeah.
be celebrations this time of year well after it.
Yeah.
Um, and so, anybody can appreciate this time of year. Anybody can partake in in the celebration,
Right.
and the holiday spirit. Because again, at this point, when you look at the majority of media surrounding Christmas, like, really, how much of it has to do with Christianity? Very little.
Well, we talked about that. It's all about neighbors hating each other. So
It is mostly, yeah. It can be about neighbors hating each other. It can be about a person who is too obsessed with business, and so
yeah.
that they have to learn that Christmas isn't about business; it's
Yeah.
about people, while
Yeah.
simultaneously falling in love
Yeah.
with somebody from their past in a small town that they will then later move to.
That's the reason for the season. That's
Yes, like, that's mostly what Christmas is about at this point in 2023.
yeah, that is. Yeah.
So.
Or leaving your kids home alone.
Right.
That's
Yeah, or like movies about Santa Claus that, and again, like, they very rarely even make mention of like any Christian origin to Santa Claus. That's very rarely mentioned.
right.
Like nobody gets into like the actual Greek, like Saint Nicholas, or like, nobody talks about him being part of like the Council of Nicaea or anything like that.
Did you
Um,
watch Violent Night?
No, I still haven't.
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
you
I'm
should.
gonna.
He's a Viking. That's his history.
Oh,
So
nice.
I
Well,
mean,
which
yeah.
which
So
which makes sense, because as long as you're
right.
talking about Santa Claus, like, there are multiple influences. So yes,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
cannot deny the influence of Saint Nicholas on the character Santa Claus. Obviously,
Right.
it's in the name. Santa Claus just comes from the Dutch for Saint Nicholas. So sure, and it was Dutch Christians who introduced Santa Claus in at least in this country, in like the 18th or 19th century, and it was because of that the character really caught on. But
Mhm.
you also can't ignore the pre-Christian influences on the character, and that's not just me. Like, there are folklorists and historians who made these connections, and it's their work and their research that I think that we largely end up leaning on, because they're very much more qualified to have those kinds of opinions than, say, just, some weirdo who writes about UFOs, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
you know and so, looking at their work, like, the influence of characters like Odin is undeniable when it comes to the depiction of Santa Claus,
Yeah.
especially before Coca-Cola got a hold of the character. So prior to that, everybody has the idea based on the poem, "The Night Before Christmas," and then
Mhm.
later on the Coca Cola Christmas campaign of Santa Claus as this rotund, rosy cheeked, jolly fellow, right? But prior to that, he wasn't really depicted as such. He was normally depicted as either, well, there were a couple different ways. He would be depicted as either this sort of gaunt figure, or as this like mischievous little elf, which is weird but fitting,
I don't
considering,
know.
right?
I kind of
I
love it.
right? It would be a little jarring, but I could get used to it. And and the gaunt figure really had it really was very similar to the way that like Father Christmas or Odin would have been depicted. And then, of course, there are the activities that Santa
Mhm.
Claus is supposed to take part in. Now, of course, Saint Nicholas himself was famous for giving gifts. You know, there's the story of him delivering gold to a family so the father would not feel obligated to sell his daughters into prostitution, which honestly could be an episode by itself because there is a lot to
Yeah.
unpack there. Like holy
Yeah.
shit, right? But beyond that, you know, he doesn't do the kind of world traveling magical kind of stuff that you see in Santa Claus. But you know who does is Odin leading the wild hunt, because Santa Claus flying all over the world and delivering gifts, but also not just delivering gifts, delivering coal to naughty kids. So there's an element of judgmentalism there, right? Where he's not just charitable. There is a punitive element as well, where if he judges you to be bad, you don't just not get something good, you actually get something bad. So have fun with
Right.
that, right? And that's
Yes.
very much Odin. That's much more Odin than say like a Saint Nicholas character. So you have again the aspects of the wild hunt, traveling all over the place through magical means, through flying, basically. You have the judgmentalism, dealing out weal and woe according to Santa's standards. You know, like there's no objective system of morality. It's just whether or not Santa judges you to be naughty or nice, right? Like that's very, very Odin. And then there's stuff like the eight tiny reindeer. You know,
Mhm.
so you've got these eight tiny reindeer. Well, you know what else they were eight of? The legs of Odin's horse, Sleipnir. So when
Oh.
Odin would lead the wild hunt, he would do so on the back of Sleipnir, his eight-legged horse, which much later became eight tiny reindeer instead, pulling this sleigh through the air. So the Santa Claus legend has Odin and the wild hunt written all over it. It's just we've kind of slapped a coat of Christian paint on it
Yeah.
and and renamed it Saint Nicholas.
And sold it to Coca-Cola for blood money. Come on.
True. Yes.
That's but yes, it's definitely it is the I mean, it is the same story very much over and over again. Even down to like Santa's elves, right? He's got his elven brethren. That's strange, right? We don't have Santa can't come here, right, from the North Pole and hire one of us to go work at the North Pole. He has to have elves. So he's taken all the mischievous. That's why we don't have house elves anymore, right? Is because Santa's taken them all and they work at the North Pole now.
Oh,
Um,
probably. That's actually another good point. Santa being situated at the North Pole. Well, Asgard was always said to be north. You know what I mean? Um, and so that's another connection from between Santa and a character like Odin. You know, the traditional home of the Germanic pantheon was said to
mhm.
be in the north. So
Interesting.
yeah.
I think it's funny how much in history, I mean, how much we knew that the Earth was round before we knew that the Earth was round, because like all the directions are always like just go north, because like eventually you circle all the way around, right? You got to get there eventually, wherever
But
it
yeah,
is you're
you
going,
totally won't just like die of dehydration first or something.
or hypothermia,
You know,
whatever,
pick one.
drown in the ocean, But they're just like, hey, go north, you'll find it, right? The North Star, right? Just follow that fucking star right there, you'll find it eventually. They could see the star
Sure.
from where they're at, so they got to be near it.
Okay. This is I didn't include this, but I definitely could have. Star of Bethlehem. UFO? Hmm?
Ooh,
Maybe. Is
maybe.
Jesus a human alien hybrid experiment? We don't know. And people will definitely get mad at me for even bringing it up.
Christians will, but people in ufology are gonna fucking eat off of that for to the end of the year.
Well, okay. See, now this is something that I know that this is something of a hot take, or maybe it's a nice cold take. I guess I don't pay enough attention to really know. But okay, so what do we have? look at the facts. We've got a bright light in the sky that communicates to these three wise men through like in angelic messenger. Sounds like a UFO occupant to me.
Mhm.
Um, to follow it to this new location where this very important figure is going to be born. We have a woman who is married,
Mhm.
yet still a virgin, who is impregnated.
Mhm.
Now, there aren't a lot of ways to do that,
No.
but artificial insemination would, right? And you have a child born then whose father is a deity, is this higher being. Well, again, like through a certain lens, that I mean, it all perfectly fits, like the UFO, like alien human hybrid narrative that people are still telling today. You know, almost like okay, you could retell the story without changing any of the facts and just flip the narrative to be like, okay, so these three guys followed a UFO to where this woman had been artificially impregnated with alien DNA and gave birth to a human alien hybrid.
A
And it would
magic
be
baby.
this, it'd be the
Yeah.
same damn story, right? It's the
Right.
exact same.
Yep.
You just changed the narrative from a Christian one to like, you know, new age human hybrid UFO lore.
Oh, well,
So
you know what? That explains why Jesus is white. That's how he could be white in an area that is
Nordics,
not white. Yeah, I mean,
Nordic aliens all day,
and I get it now.
right? We did it. We cracked the code. We're both going to disappear because we figured this out. You know,
We're laughing
mankind was
now, but
never. Yes,
people are going to
you.
be
Yeah,
wondering for the next 2 weeks. Are they still around?
yeah. You laugh now, but when the Men in Black show up, it
Yeah,
gets a lot less funny. No, but okay, that was a huge digression, but
it was.
it
It
was a
was fun though.
necessary one for like a Christmas episode. People, this is what people need to be talking about.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I
come on,
agree. This is the
yeah,
important stuff here.
right.
So I mean, if people aren't listening, they're missing out. I don't know. No, so going back to Santa, one thing that, like I said, I spoiled it in the beginning, is really interesting about this is that you actually have a collection. It's not just one. It's not just two. You have a collection of Santa Claus sightings in this book, modern day Santa Claus sightings,
Yes.
and that is wild to me. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to let you. I'm gonna let you pick one. Probably, I'm gonna assume maybe it's the one that was relayed to you that kind of, really got the train moving on this topic. And then I'll share my favorite one.
Okay.
So go ahead. You can share yours, whichever
Well,
one you want.
yeah. I mean, if I were going to share one, it would be the one that I received, or one of the ones that I received directly. But it's the most Santa-y one that I received directly, and that came from Haley Pierce, and she told me this story back in 2021. She was 24 at the time, and her experience took place when she was 8 years old. So you do the math as to what year that was. She was at the time living in Lancaster, Ohio, obviously with her family. She was 8 and had just left the Christmas Eve service at their local church. Now, she, in her excitement to lead, this is, I mean, I can relate to this, having grown up in a Christian household. In her excitement to get the fuck out of church so she could go home, especially because it was Christmas Eve, and the sooner you get home, the sooner you get to go to bed and then wake up and get presents.
Mhm.
She was the first one out, so like nobody else is out there, and she looks up and she sees in the sky what very much appeared to be a sleigh being pulled by reindeer. It wasn't a terribly long sighting, but she is very certain of what this object appeared to be. And in speaking with her about it, I found absolutely no reason to doubt that she was authentically relating her experience. And so that's that's interesting to me, like that's a big deal. I'm not saying I know what she saw. Um, Anybody who is likely to write this off as an hallucination or something, that's fine. That's your business. Like I'm not going to ask you to believe in anything, because I try not to believe in things myself. I try to excise belief from the equation, because it's not particularly helpful in this field. There are things we know and there are things we don't know, and something that we don't know is what Haley saw that night, frankly.
Right.
It is unexplained.
Sure.
But the experience she related was of seeing this sleigh being pulled by reindeer flying through the air, and that's fascinating. I never thought I would ever hear from somebody who had a legitimate Santa Claus sighting. Like when I first was like, "Hey," I had been hearing the scuttlebutt, about Santa Claus. People doing fucking seances and shit to talk to Santa Claus and all this stuff. And I was just like, well, okay, has anybody ever actually seen, Santa Claus? Like, has anybody ever actually had like a legitimate encounter? And yeah, sure enough, like I got one, which was enough to pique my interest.
So
So,
was this after we
uh,
did the episode on the summoning Santa?
oh yeah,
That's
I
very
think
neat.
so. Because
That's very
wasn't
neat.
that, when did we do that? Was that 20?
That was last year. It was
Was that
2022.
last year?
I
No,
think
maybe
so.
I had this one then. If okay,
I
so
can't remember.
I might, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I had a glass of whiskey in my hand that whole episode.
I believe that about
So
you. You were
yeah,
very worked up. That's
yeah, no, I feel ways about it. I really do.
I don't blame you.
I have my tolerance for like bullshit in the name of quote unquote fun in this field is very low. It
You're
really, I get it. Some people want to treat the paranormal like it's professional wrestling, and that's
yeah,
cool, but I think it fucking sucks.
yeah,
And,
yeah, but
I'm not talking about like pro wrestling is awesome. Like that shit rules, but like also they're not pretending it's real, like
right.
that like they're really good about not breaking character, even, off camera and stuff a lot of the time. But, nobody is like, for instance, there aren't people out there who like are desperately trying to convince you that they're real wrestlers, but they get disregarded in favor of fucking professional wrestlers. Like that doesn't exist. Professional wrestling is not problematic in the way that
Right.
people treating this field like it's fucking professional wrestling is, because
Yeah.
the end result in this field is that there are a lot of people with legitimate experiences who get pushed to the side in favor of fucking bullshit celebrities and their stupid antics.
Mhm.
And I think that's just a real fucking shame.
Yeah, like
So
summoning Santa. Oh yeah, you were like
yes,
you were like, "Bro, summon Santa right now if you can summon Sa—" You weren't doing that, but you
yeah.
were basically like, "If you can fucking summon Santa Claus, I will come there."
Oh yeah, no, I will.
And
But it's
I
all,
would too. Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's usually like spirit box stuff, which
right.
is, in my experience, like some of
Questionable.
it is interesting, but a lot of it is just sort of yes anding each other into whatever narrative
Right.
you are like collaboratively trying to create. And that's cool for improv theater, but I don't give a fuck about improv theater. Like I want real experiences, not let's have fun and LARP, like
They're
that's
like doing
just,
the spirit box, and all of a sudden some bells come on, like it starts jingling bells. You hear a faint ho 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 in the background.
yeah, right. If that happened, that would be super compelling. But
You'd
again,
be like,
100%, that's never happened.
no.
0% chance.
Maybe
So
I'll try it this year, you know?
do it.
So, maybe I'll try it. I got a spirit box. I can do that. We'll see what happens. And then I'll try it next year. It'll be the new Christmas tradition. I'll try to summon Santa every year until it happens.
Cool. Even if it doesn't happen, just say it did and people will believe you.
That's
So no
true. I
big
could
deal.
make a
Just
lot of money
just
that
make
way.
something up that's entertaining. Be like, yeah,
Yeah.
I totally contacted Santa and he said he's an egregore and he told me to like crumble up a bunch of frosted flakes and put them in my hair and then, dance in my front yard for an hour. Just whatever stupid thing you can think of.
He told me the North Star's a UFO.
Yeah, oh, totally. He was like, "Oh, Jesus is a human alien hybrid experiment. Don't tell anybody; they'll get really mad."
He knows. It was really him, you guys. He knew my middle name.
Right.
Um,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
I must have had this that whole episode, but it never came up because this is like a legitimate experience, and that is
it
all
might
bullshit.
have come up. I mean, don't quote me on
Maybe
whether
it
or not
did.
it did
I
or
don't
didn't,
remember.
because
Who
I don't
knows?
remember.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, if you guys want to go back and listen to that episode, please do. Again, you got 2 weeks to fill, so go listen to the past Christmas episodes we've done here on the show. Maybe it was there. I was just curious. I didn't know if that was something. I believe in the book you said you got it in 2021, so that might have been why we talked about Santa. I
That
don't
could be.
know. But I don't fucking remember.
Right?
How about that? I just don't remember.
What
Could
am
be.
I, a guy who remembers shit that happened a year ago?
All
Come
right.
on. Obviously, I'm not.
It's episode 192. I don't remember. It's what it is. So my favorite story, and there's plenty more like that, and plenty more in general. But my favorite one that stuck out the most was, and I'm not going to tell it verbatim because I didn't write a fucking book about it. But uh, there's a husband and a wife who are struggling with money, right? And they're at the grocery store, and they are, I believe they were at the back of the grocery store or outside of the
Hmm.
grocery store.
It was towards
And
the back near like the freezer section.
okay. And they are, counting out their change and trying to figure out, what they can get with what they got. And they don't quite have enough for what they need. And so they're kind of debating, well, what can we sacrifice, going back and forth. And an old gentleman walks up to them and doesn't say anything, and reaches out to the husband and starts, pulls out a leather pouch and starts pouring money into his hand, change into his hand. And then, they went to kind of go thank him, and he just kind of wasn't there anymore. He didn't say anything and just kind of left. And even though the witness did admit that this was not exactly on Christmas Day, this was around Christmas, potentially the day after or the days after, she didn't remember. What was really interesting to me was that, she tells this story, and, she says that, I tell people, people say that that's really not proof, right? That that's Santa, but I know. I know it was Santa.
Yeah.
And she just seems so sure of it. I don't remember. I don't think that's one that you had personally. I think that's one that you had a big resource that you had that a lot of these sightings came from. But
No, that
um,
actually was one. I spoke to this woman myself.
oh, okay,
Yeah, this was her name was Tree, and she did allow me to use her first name. I know her last name, but she doesn't want me to use it.
sure,
And yeah, I spoke to her directly, and we had a really good conversation. And her experience was impactful. It was
hmm,
important. It might have even been something of a turning moment, like a
yeah,
pivotal moment in her life. And what's interesting about that story is he actually did say one thing. So
oh,
he
okay,
says like he dumps all this change, and as they're looking down and they have to like her husband has to get it bring up his second hand to catch all this change, and they're looking at it because there's just so much of it, and it's weird. He's pouring it out of like a leather pouch.
hmm,
um he
and it's
says
overflowing.
yeah, right. And he says buy some candy bars too, and then he winked at them, and then they look down at all this change, and then they look up, and he's gone, which is a pretty Santa Claus thing to do. But
Yeah,
his appearance wasn't of the traditional,
right.
19 like early 19 or early 20th century, early 1900s Santa Claus. He was this older skinny guy. She didn't remember any facial hair. She said he was bald. um, and so he didn't really have the traditional appearance, but his actions were very similar. And I had to include it because this led to a lifetime of Christmas spirit, frankly, and
Right.
honestly, some like further sort of Christmas miracles. Like she went on to say how basically ever since then, when she's been struggling around this time of year, And she's not struggling anymore, but working her way up to where she is now. She always received what she needed during Christmas time, up to and
Mhm.
including anonymous gifts of presents just left at her house for her kids,
Mhm.
which
Wow.
was
Yeah.
which was amazing. And so she has carried this spirit with her into her own activities, where now when she sees somebody struggling, she's the first person to just go and help, and she doesn't look for any credit. She doesn't have to give her name or anything. She just that's the first thing she does. If she has enough, then she's going to give to other people, you know. And I thought
Yeah.
that was so amazing to me, that this potentially paranormal experience could lead to this that could lead to this lifetime of giving, to have that kind of impact on somebody and kind of show them that life doesn't have to be this selfish rat race. You know, it can be Christmas every day. You know what I mean? Like, we can take that spirit of kindness and charity, and it doesn't just have to be some marketed commercialistic bullshit, right? It can be a real thing that really helps people,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really cool, you know.
Well, and because it's one of those things because she became Santa, you know,
Yeah,
and that's kind of what when you talk about Santa potentially being a type of egregore. I mean, he's definitely Santa Claus is real, but Santa Claus is definitely a type of thought form in a strange way, and I feel like that encounter, it could have been some guy. It definitely could have been some guy, right? And he just, I don't know, fucking,
yeah.
he was also Spring Heel Jack and he had those cool shoes and he bounced away. I don't know. It could have been some guy, but in the context of the story and what it meant and what, like you said, what happened afterwards, it didn't matter. In the context of this story, he is Santa. And so I feel like made that that really made it very that's the magical part about it, right? And that's the part that I love about Christmas is that you were Santa. Santa is alive and thriving, just maybe not the Coca-Cola wielding Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Or maybe in some way he is, the based off of these sightings, they could be, you know.
Well,
Um,
yeah, then you have the sightings from
right.
people, and a lot of these, other than like the sighting I got from Haley, of course, which was direct. A lot of the other sightings that described something more traditional in terms of the modern commercial
Right.
appearance of Santa Claus. Like, a lot of those sightings are unsourced, and so you don't really
Sure.
know. Like, I don't know their provenance beyond like this one particular guy who actually compiled them. Um, and a lot of those describe the character as he appears in his commercial aspects. So the Coca Cola Santa Claus, right? And the thing about those is, unlike say like Tree's story, uh, those Santas aren't usually really doing Santa Claus things. They're
Right.
just kind of creeping around people's houses, being fucking weirdos, which isn't very Santa Clausy to me. Like, that's not, and that gets into my issue with like egregores, which again it could be its own episode. But I feel like I had a pretty good rant on egregores last time we did this, so I don't know if I have to go
Yeah.
into the whole
No.
thing again. But like like that's an issue, and so to me, those sightings seem to be more likely to indicate something like, if they are some kind of being or entity, assuming they are for this thought
Sure.
exercise, um, then rather than being like in egregore, since they don't really conform to what our expectations of Santa Claus, uh, 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 of what Santa Claus would be doing, it seems likelier to me that it would be something appearing as Santa Claus that isn't Santa Claus. So something that maybe sort of plucked that image out of the subconscious mind of the observer to appear as this thing in order to I don't know, disguise itself, mess with people. I have no idea, but it doesn't seem to actually be Santa Claus in any sense of the word, because it itself doesn't necessarily seem to believe that it is Santa Claus. You know,
Are you saying that? So you're saying that sheep squatch is Santa Claus?
I am, yes. So sheep
Okay,
squatch is Santa Claus,
I knew
and you
it.
know that by the horns.
Yeah,
Um,
just
wait,
making sure we're on the same page. No,
right, right, right.
but no, I understand what you mean. And I think that's people. Obviously, you guys listening. I mean, you got to buy this book. You got to read it yourself. You got to take in these accounts and come up with your own conclusion about it. Whether or not these are like you said, they're not. We can't validate those stories as well, just because you personally haven't spoken with them. They definitely could be experiencing something, and it could be a mixture of things, right? Just people
Sure.
being young kids and misremembering things, or some of them are like, oh, my parents thought it was a dream, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was Santa, maybe it was sheep squatch. um we don't, maybe it was Jesus. I don't know. But I do think that Christmas time in general does have this air of magic to it either way, and I think that that is something that we can at least see consistently across the board and across time, across history, and it's something that's very much alive today. And I think that that is very interesting, and is worthy of paying some type of attention to. Do we need to solve it? No, not necessarily. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm still gonna get my presents from Santa, whether or not he's sheep squatch. I don't know, but you know, I'm still gonna have my Christmas magic.
Oh, totally.
Um, I think that I had asked this question a couple years ago, and maybe I wasn't original, so I'm not gonna take all the credit for it, but I do see it every year now. I always ask if Santa Claus is a type of cryptid, a type of fae. What would it be categorized as? And as we discussed earlier, definitely some type of fae at minimum, right?
I take issue at the separation of cryptids and fairies only because uh, there are enough people who believe that certain representations of things like trolls or ogres or giants or similar could represent a relic hominid species
Hmm.
like Bigfoot in areas in which those kinds of legends came to be. So, um, again, like fairy can't be its own category. Fairy is a catch-all that people used
Right.
to use. So it's like is Santa Claus a cryptid or a spirit or a thought form? I don't know. What's it? Or is there enough of a difference between spirit and thought form for those to even be like separate categories?
Right. Yeah, we'd have to
I don't
pinpoint what
know.
they are, and we don't know. So
See, that's the other thing. So like here we are trying to explain one mystery with
with another.
another,
Yep.
which I call out specifically in the book as something that we shouldn't do.
Well,
Um,
that's what I
I,
said. Fairy fits perfectly then for Santa.
well then, yeah, everything in the book is a fairy. Absolutely,
Everything.
it's
Yeah,
all
all of
fairies.
it. You wrote a
Totally,
book about fairies.
100% fairies.
You might as well
We
just call
nailed
it
it.
fairies. I don't know. I can't tell you what he is. On Christmas Eve this night I'll stay up extra late and I'll try to ask him myself.
Yes,
We'll see. Tobias, you try to stay up too. We'll
I
both track
will.
him on NORAD and see if, we can't, get his arrival here. That's if the Sandman doesn't come first, that fucking guy. So
Every time.
I think Santa pays him off. It's bullshit. He's in bed with Big Sand.
I knew it.
Uh, anyway, do you have any closing remarks about Christmas or the book or anything?
Sure. Yeah, I think that for me, something that everybody should remember is while it is important and interesting and can even be entertaining to examine these legends, what I think we have to keep in mind is that it's okay for Christmas magic to persist. We don't have to we don't have to get rid of the magic. We don't have to disenchant this season in order to understand it. And so allow yourself to have that wonder, allow yourself to have that magic, and allow yourself to still enjoy this time of year and enjoy the mysteries that are a part of it, and don't get too hung up on what Santa Claus necessarily is, or what if this is this, or that is that. Just let yourself enjoy this time of year, and above all, be kind.
I think that is a really good message, and I agree. Yes, be whimsical, be magical. This is the time. If you are a closet magic person, this is the time of year where you can come out, right, and and be who you are, and nobody's going to bat an eye. So definitely take advantage of the time, and just enjoy it. Just enjoy the fun of it all. Just be in the moment of the magical season, and who cares why, right? It's just let yourself enjoy it. It's fine. Nobody's gonna judge you, you know unless you're into like weird stuff and you're enjoying weird. And I don't mean like weird like here. I mean, like, I don't know, if you like feet or something, that's kind of strange. I usually don't
Well,
kink shame, but
yeah.
I can't get behind that one. um don't go catfishing any whales. It's just rude, at the end of the
That's
day.
not very Christmassy. Catfishing whales is like the least Christmassy thing you can do.
Yeah, I just, and now I'm just, I'm just being awkward because I'm not good at sappy, mushy stuff. So, um, on that note, I guess I'll end it there. And, well, we'll see you guys back here next year.